We are so fortunate to begin Imagination in Action today with two leaders who are operating at the very center of one of the defining questions of this decade, which is, will AI play a positive tipping point or negative tipping point role? And also, will the energy be sufficient to power the explosive growth of AI and data centers? So we're so honored joining us today. We have on my left, Evelyn Wang, MIT's Vice President for Energy and Climate, appointed last January after serving as Director of ARPA-E, where she led the design and deployment of high-risk, high-reward energy R&D programs, many of which are now scaling globally. And to Evelyn's left, we're lucky to have Tom Taylor, President and CEO of the Bezos Earth Fund, appointed last July after 22 years at Amazon. That certainly counts for a lot of tenure. Most recently as Senior Vice President, and Tom spent his last 5 years at Amazon running Alexa, which I think almost many of us find we're talking to daily. And the Bezos Earth Fund, as John mentioned, was launched with a $10 billion starting commitment from Jeff to address climate and nature, making it one of the most consequential pools of climate capital in the world. So Tom and Evelyn, you're both relatively new in roles that sit at the intersection of science, capital, innovation, and systems change. As the 56th World Economic Forum gets underway, how are you personally approaching this moment and its challenges? What feels most urgent or promising to each of you right now? We'll start with Evelyn. Yes.
Great. Well, thanks, Allison. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. And it's really an honor to be with Tom here on stage as well. I think what gives me great excitement and optimism is that we are at the opportunity stage of thinking about the role of innovation and how that plays with technology and discovery, and thinking about now how financial structures can be different and where there's market pull. And I think there's a foundational element here. I think Tom and I would agree that energy plays such a central role in this. And there certainly is a market pull for energy right now. And think about AI and data centers and the opportunity now to innovate and drive abundant energy while decreasing emissions. So there's a lot of investment now. And think about nuclear, fission and fusion, geothermal, solar and battery storage technologies. But I think what's also important to recognize is the interplay between the global system and the local. So as we think about now what the role of all of this is to how we build well-being for people in this moment, now how do we understand our Earth systems dynamics, the science, the physics, the chemistry, the biology of all that, and how that now translates to innovations related to energy, related to digital infrastructure, and thinking about, well, how do we build resilient now design in a way to enable now empowering lives of people and communities as we think about also now the changing climate.
And Tom, you've acquired this very important role quite recently. So what do you see as some of the most urgent issues as you look out there for the Bezos Earth Fund?
Yeah, thank you, Allison. Just to do a little bit of background, the Bezos Earth Fund, as you said, started 5 years ago with Jeff and Lauren Bezos. And if you listen to Jeff talk about his long-term vision, it's like, hey, the Earth is the best planet, he pointed out to me, in this solar system, right? So he sometimes thinks bigger than I'm able to. But he wants to make sure, so the focus of the fund is both on climate and nature. And I think that's a very interesting combination. There's obviously a lot of relationships between those two things, but it reminds us that we also need to have human progress, and we need to have a beautiful planet to live on. So as I came into the role, Jeff asked me to sort of focus, let's do things that are more tangible. Let's solve the real problem, not just sort of move the money around. Could we do more sponsored research? That's actually how Evelyn and I got sort of connected from her experience in ARPA and how we blew that. It's been delightful to work with her. But I think just starting climate and nature, it's pretty easy. The big three are certainly energy, right? We have to transform energy to cleaner forms of energy. We have to conserve the nature that we have remaining. And then, of course, I think food and agriculture is the biggest threat to nature. And again, there's a lot of relationships here that agriculture is driving methane use, which is also part of climate, and water use. So all these things kind of go together. But those are the three big ones for us. And so we're just trying to take a more tactical approach, more tangible approach, and really focus on the problems.
I love that. I mean, and also every time I see pictures of Mars, I'm thinking to myself, wow, it needs water, needs a few more things.
Getting to Mars, tough problem. Like that's not a good plan B, in my opinion.
No,
So.
I'm glad to hear that you and Jeff are aligned on that. So, Tom, we often hear a lot about negative climate tipping points, sort of ice sheets, coral reefs, ocean warming, but you and Evelyn talk a lot about positive tipping points. Can you say a little bit more why you think that framing is so important these days and what positive tipping points you're aiming for?
Yeah, I think, tipping points are driven. We know the negative ones, right? You can focus on that, and we should be aware of those, and they should drive some urgency. But we also have to consider the positive tipping points, sometimes driven by social. But I'll talk about ones from technology. Obviously, the issues of horses 100 years ago was a big deal. Technology changed that, and very quickly, automobiles replaced horses in 5 years. Nobody could picture that, and we have many other examples: internet, the phone, the TV, and so. Again, technology can solve these problems. So instead of getting focused on the pessimism, I think, of negative, we need to focus on the positive. And I do think, we already are seeing some. We see the growth of electric vehicles is much faster than people thought. The low cost of solar energy has dropped down. And once the economics change, boom, it's off and running. I'd like to see, I think we should be able to see more ahead of us. I think the use of AI in bioengineering and other things, I think these things are going to take off. I can see some in industrial chemical. And I have a long list of things where I think there are some future positive tipping points. We need to focus on the technology, and just as negative tipping points are hard to predict, positive ones are hard to predict in terms of when, but they're real and we should drive them.
That's such a great way to round our day. And even the IEA, to your point, underestimated the solar growth for the last 20 years. So even the experts are meant to be back.
Electric vehicles will never happen, right? That's what they said 15 years ago. It's just changed.
It's really amazing. So Evelyn, you've argued that tipping points only matter if we understand systems thinking. They're embedded in. So energy, supply chains, and materials. How does systems thinking change the way we tackle climate solutions? And where do you see people oversimplifying the problem these days?
Well, let me just start and say that I don't want to diminish the value of a single technology that could be a tipping point. But we know that when we think about energy and climate, these are systems problems, and they're definitely very interconnected in many ways. So we do have to think about not just energy, and Tom kind of shared this already, but think about food and water and the built environment and AI, digital infrastructure, and the economy, and how these all come together. And I think that's really critical as we're now understanding also what the implications as we're driving the technological solution that is a tipping point and the implications on the overall system.
That's wonderful. So obviously a dominant theme this year at Davos, not only for John's event, but also on the main stage, is whether we're going to have enough energy and water to power not only the data center and AI needs of the U.S., but globally. And Evelyn and Tom, from your perspectives, is the U.S. and global energy system adequate for the growth rates we're seeing? And which solutions and technologies do you think need to scale the fastest to prevent energy from becoming the big bottleneck for AI? Tom, maybe we'll start with you.
Thanks. Well, it is true. If you walk down the promenade, if you don't have AI on your building, you're just not here. I'll also point out that a few years ago it said, Bitcoin, and then the next year crypto, and there was energy things there, and I think as I say, it's not just AI, it's data centers, right? So you have to think about all the uses of data. They run your hospital bill and run your Netflix. So I think that's genuine. My own sense coming from Alexa's, on one side of this, I'm not sure the growth will really be as high as some projections. You have economics have to play out. We're building these services to be used, and I see clearly the technology companies are going to invest a lot in making sure that they shouldn't have to grow that fast. They're investing in higher temperature systems, closed loop water. I mean, I believe that the technology companies will work very hard to reduce the water usage, but it's real. And I would actually say, listening to some of the conferences so far this week, it's not just that. Think about it. Just think about energy. I'm not sure it's AI and data, but it is energy for sure. Electric vehicle adoption, if we get it in the way that we want, is going to drive way more electricity. Heating and cooling around the world, as economies and improve, as human progress is made, people want heating and air conditioning. And you continue to have industrial uses of heat and electricity. So those aren't going away. So I do think it's imperative that we grow energy capability, energy abundance. And I'm happy to, I'm happy to see so much in renewable solar and wind. As the costs come down, the adoption comes up. I also think we have to work on the base load power, so nuclear and geothermal engineering, geothermal energy. And so I think we have to just, build, and then finally, the grid is important, right? So you have solar energy in one part of the country. Think about the U.S. That's great. The sun is over here, but the people are over here. Same with the wind. So we have to figure out how to move the energy from one place to another. So I think totally agree with you. It's about energy abundance, and we have to focus and grow the base load and renewables, and we have to build a grid.
Wow, those are such important points. So electrification of everything, EVs, heat pumps, not only through data centers, and then also we need system solutions, particularly with renewables. That's great.
Sorry, can I add one thing? Because I've been in some sessions this week with like energy companies and utilities, and this is a big question. Is AI going to destroy us all because of the energy uses? This group of people, what I heard from them was on the other side of this equation, AI. They're like, AI is fixing my utility grid. It's reducing base load because I don't have to run these language models all the time. If I got a prediction of monthly usage or a 15-day forecast to the minute, the guy's like, I could get a 5% increase in efficiency of the current grid, right? So you have to look at the other side of this.
The positive,
these are the very positive tipping points. And it was exciting for me to hear the very people that are part of this, the energy companies, the utility operators, are saying, no, we see AI as a net positive.
I love that. I love that. Evelyn, what's your own view of the adequacy in the U.S. and globally?
Yeah, well, I very much resonate with Tom just shared. And I think there is an opportunity, though, to drive innovation, these tipping points. And I'll just say that there's a lot of discussions about obviously deploying more natural gas. And I think there's an opportunity for innovation. We know part of the challenge with natural gas is emissions. And we don't have technology to do cost-effective carbon capture. Right now, if we were to now deploy DAC, it's 2 times the cost of energy. And so we need to innovate. We need to think about new ways to now do carbon capture at scale at a cost point, reduced energy cost as well. And that could be a positive tipping point. Another is solar, for example. We also know that renewables like solar, they need, as we increase deployment of solar and increase the penetration on the grid, we need long-duration energy storage. And that's an innovation that doesn't really yet exist at the scale and cost points either. And so we need drive innovation in that way, low-cost materials, supply chains by which we can build and manufacture at scale.
I love this. Now, I know that both of you are particularly excited about agriculture innovation. It accounts for roughly a third of greenhouse gas emissions, and we won't get to Jeff's vision of a sustainable, healthy nature planet if we don't address this. But I'd love to hear from both of you. Maybe, Evelyn, we can start with you. Describe a little bit more what you think AI can bring to agriculture, which sits at the nexus of food security. And I think our audience would love to hear, why is MIT getting involved with agriculture?
Sure. Well, agriculture is certainly on, I think, both Jeff and my mind, because we have to think about our future and how do we feed those 10 billion people that's projected by mid-century. And I think the role of MIT as we think about ag, while we're not known as an ag school per se, but there's a lot of opportunity as we think about now innovations of biotech and how we take those tool sets to now drive agriculture and supplying food, increase yield, as well as now making them more nutritious, while we're also dealing with climate stress. And I think that's the opportunity. And I can certainly share a specific example by which I think is really exciting what MIT is pursuing. And this is actually, in fact, related to an enzyme called rubisco. And some of you may know, it's actually the heart of photosynthesis. And what it does is it actually catalyzes a conversion, nearly all CO2, to create food and biomass on Earth. But the challenge is that it's actually incredibly inefficient. And with climate stress, it gets worse. And so it's a well-known problem. But there's so many factors that contribute to the efficiency of this rubisco enzyme. And so the question really is, now with all the factors, we can't understand the mechanisms. But this is where AI plays a big role, by which now you can take advantage of AI machine learning in ways that can help us now design, now and engineer now new enzymes, new kind of more complex enzymes for rubisco. And that's an opportunity which brings much excitement and revolutionizing potentially now plant engineering and now feeding now all the people that we need in the world.
That's fantastic. And Tom, maybe you can just share a little bit. Has agriculture been part of the Bezos Earth vision from the beginning, or is this one of the things that you're bringing with your leadership?
No, it's been there. I was just sort of thinking, only the two of us would sit here and get so excited about fungus, on the.
But there's a few in our audience, Tom. I think we've got a fungal interested forward crowd.
I think the agriculture comes from, you have to start with the number one carbon sink on the earth is trees, right? It's the cheapest form of carbon capture. And the biggest threat to trees and forest is growth of agriculture. So that's where that comes from. So we're looking at any number of ways. A lot of this is around research. And I think you mentioned we recently announced some AI Global Challenge. So I'll just tell you some examples that were around there. Like, could you use AI to understand the genetics to modify root growth of crops such that the roots go deeper into the ground so that the carbon is stored deeper underneath. So when you till the ground, you don't release the carbon back. There's a big issue, obviously, methane from cows and sheep. And so could you have forage crops that cows and sheep eat that reduces the amount of methane that they produce? So there's any number of, again, technical innovations that are very basic around, so I wouldn't say agriculture like so much like farming, but it's driving the big usage of the impact to climate. But, the AI is applying to any number of things. We're also looking at monitoring of using AI to monitor bird paths. So you can see migration paths on edge, computing on fishing vessels. So they're monitoring, are you legally getting the right fish that are coming in? So there's any number of ways AI is applying. Certainly agriculture is an interesting one.
Well, I love this. And I guess a third theme you guys could both add is also in a time of climate change, getting resilient crops and not just having monoculture is also a key goal. So glad that you're both on this. One question I'd love to ask you in our remaining 30 seconds, so this will be a lightning round. As you look at the WEF agenda this year, which has some climate, but not as much as in past years, what do you think is really missing from the agenda this year that you would like to see leaders in this room and the WEF discussing? Maybe I'll start with you, Tom.
Well, I'll come back to a lot of the discussion over many years has been around the negative tipping points and the focus on the Paris Agreement and the controls of that. And what I think this year, what I'm hearing is also focus on the positive tipping points. So people are looking at how is AI actually driving a faster transition to cleaner energy. And again, I think Davos is an amazing place because you're getting private industry, finance, philanthropy, NGOs together. And so but it's nice for me to hear that across all those groups is a focus on the positive improvements in life.
Evelyn,
and I'll just add that I think this is the opportunity for more partnerships, more collaboration. And I think having all these people in the room allows us to think innovatively to how do we move the needle together? And I think that's what's really exciting and brings us great optimism.
Well, thank you both. And both of you model the kind of collaboration that would be so great to have all the way around the Davos community. Thank you so much, Evelyn and Tom.
Thank you.